In Tuesday's Red and Blue political roundup, Senator Bernie Sanders officially launched his second bid for the White House. The Vermont lawmaker told CBS this morning he's more confident than ever in his progressive agenda. Sanders' ideas were called radical by some in 2016, but many of the Democratic contenders are now embracing them. Here's part of the senator's interview with John Dickerson.
Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years? All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream.
So you're saying the party came your way?
Well, I don't want to say that. I think most people would say that.
Is that your argument then against your competitors, which is, I was Medicare for all before Medicare for all was cool?
I guess that's one way of looking at it.
Now, not everyone feels Sanders' platform will set him apart this time around. President Trump weighed in on Tuesday, saying he thinks Sanders might have already missed his shot.
Bernie Sanders is running, yeah, that's right. Personally, I think he missed his time. So we'll see how he does. You got a lot of people running, but only one person's going to win. I hope you know who that person is.
I think Jeff Mason does. Let's bring him in. He's a White House correspondent for Reuters, joining us to talk about this and other political headlines. Jeff, the president held a rally Monday in Florida, down in Miami. I was there. It was supposed to be focused on Venezuela, but much of it was aimed at potential 2020 opponents. Let's just quickly take a listen to some of what the president said.
To those who would try to impose socialism on the United States, we again deliver a very simple message. America will never be a socialist country.
What do you make of the president's remarks in the shadow of what's happening in Venezuela and just before we hear Senator Sanders re-enter the presidential race?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that there was a strong undercurrent there in his remarks yesterday that was trying to contrast what's going on in Venezuela with what could potentially happen, or suggest that could potentially happen in the United States if some of the people who are running for the Democratic nomination, namely Bernie Sanders, but I think the president probably also has AOC, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, in mind as well there. It's an interesting comment. It's an interesting way of getting his base sort of riled up a little bit against some of those ideas. But it was, as you say, it was in the context of a speech that was largely about Venezuela and his administration's actions to sort of encourage the military there to let aid into Venezuela. But the undercurrent, or the sort of theme of socialism, was definitely a big one.
And do you get the sense that Democrats will now need to embrace a progressive agenda to clinch the nomination, or to redefine or even define what American socialism is? Because what's happening in Venezuela, is an economic disaster for many reasons. Finland could be argued as a socialist country that's doing absolutely fine. So what to make of socialism in this campaign?
Well, I don't think you're going to hear that many people use the word socialism on the Democratic side. Certainly Bernie Sanders has self-identified as a democratic socialist, but you're not going to hear any of the others running for the nomination use that term. You will hear people talk about being to the left or being progressive, and some of the ideas that you just played in that clip from Bernie Sanders' interview, that those ideas are going to come out and have already come out in that campaign. But I don't think that the focus is going to be on the word socialism. I think that there will be more focus instead on issues with regard to getting health care for a lot of people, with education and college education without debt for a lot of people. Some on the right, and President Trump may be one of them, may describe those as socialist ideas, but I think that term will get less attention on the left.
Now, let's look at what's happening on the legal front. We've been looking into 16 states, led by California, now suing the Trump administration because of his effort to declare a national emergency for border wall money. There was some criticism of his advisor, Stephen Miller, on Fox News over the weekend, not really making a slam-dunk legal argument in defense of the president's actions. Do you get the sense that the White House is fully prepared for this legal battle?
Well, I think the president has certainly expressed confidence that the White House will do well in this legal battle. I actually asked him that question today in the Oval Office. What was his reaction to that lawsuit that came out from the 16 states yesterday? And he just said that he thinks that the United States, that his government, that his administration is going to do very well in that legal battle. He believes strongly that he had the right to declare that state of emergency, and I think he seems to be looking forward to it. Now, that is a slightly different question from yours, which is, are they really prepared? And I can't answer that other than to say that his lawyers absolutely would have briefed the president before he made that declaration, and I suggest that his confidence is not just coming from bravado. I think it's also coming from the fact that the White House has looked at the legal ramifications and believes that it will be able to do well in court.
And when we expect this to ultimately end up in front of the Supreme Court, I know that you've written about the roles that each justice may play. We know that Justice Kavanaugh is the newest appointed official there. What could we expect from each of them?
Well, I mean, if it does end up in the Supreme Court, it's not a newsflash to say that the Supreme Court leans conservative. There's a the majority on the 9-member court are Republican appointees and so it's conservative leaning. So the president, no doubt, will hope that means that such a judgment would land in his favor. But if you look just even this week at some of the direction that John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, has taken, it's not unusual, or it's not out of the realm for him to be the new swing vote. So I think people will be watching him for that. But I think there's also a lot of confidence in the White House that the court would back the president.
I want to get your views on something else the president said on Tuesday. Quote, he is in no rush to see North Korea end its nuclear program. We just want to listen to that for a moment.
We're in no rush. A lot of the media would like to say, oh, well, you know, what's going on? Speed, speed, speed. No rush whatsoever. We are going to have our meeting. We'll see what happens. And I think ultimately we're going to be very, very successful.
Next week, there's the summit the president will hold with North Korean Chairman Kim Jong-un in Vietnam. Up until now, the whole strategy was supposed to be about getting North Korea to give up its nuclear program. So what's the strategy in having a second meeting if the president is in no rush for such a goal?
Great question. And there's not really an answer. I think part of the answer is that the president takes a lot of pride and pleasure in having developed a relationship with Kim Jong-un. He likes to suggest that he has really helped improve that relationship in contrast to the Obama administration. He's falsely said that the Obama administration was close to declaring war on North Korea, and I think it always bears repeating that it was President Trump who, towards the beginning of his administration, was exchanging insults with Kim Jong-un and saying that the United States would basically annihilate the country if necessary. Obviously, a lot has changed since then, but I think the president's use of the word or his terminology today in saying that he's in no rush is also a way of playing down expectations from that summit. Some people will probably look to a meeting like that and thinking, well, the big outcome should be they agree on denuclearization and agree on a timetable for that. But the president is certainly suggesting that that's not likely to be the case, and that there's not going to be a lot of pressure coming from him for that to happen swiftly.
And even as we push the White House for an answer on, well, what has North Korea done since the meeting in Singapore? There's no different response than what they said before that meeting, which is, well, they're not testing missiles. President Trump says he's fallen in love with the chairman, so perhaps that's enough. We shall see. I also want to get your thoughts on a directive the president signed on Tuesday that would lay the groundwork to create a space force. He's made a very big deal about this. Explain what's happened already and what's the next step here.
Sure. Yeah, he has made a big deal out of this, and he said that this is going to be another branch of the military. He's shown a lot of support for it and is very proud of it. In terms of next steps, this is a little bit of a back down from what his original proposal was for the Space Force in terms of the amount of money going into it. But he made a point of saying in the Oval Office today, right before signing the directive about it, that U.S. adversaries are active in space and present a threat in space, and that's the reason that the United States needs this now.
Remember all the logos they sent out, potential logos for this Space Force. Perhaps we'll see some more of those. Good to chat with you.
I bet we will.
Yep. Jeff Mason, great to chat with you, joining us from Washington.
You too.